All right, family, let's jump right in. Dear Dr. Dandridge, my wife and I love each other deeply, but money has become the silent storm in our marriage. We grew up with very different experiences. She learned to save every penny, and I learned to spend before it disappeared. Lately, every financial decision turns into an argument. We both grieve the dream of being financially stable, and it's starting to weigh on our connection. Sometimes I fear that the stress of trying to make it will cost us our peace. How can couples grieve and grow through financial struggles without letting money become the third person in the marriage? Wow. This is a deep one. So let's sit with it for a minute, okay? Now, I'm not one to give relationship advice. I really want to hone in on the grief associated with this season that's in you and your spouse's marriage. The truth of the matter is that when we enter into agreements and relationships with people, that we bring a certain part of our identity with us. And sometimes the identities that we're bringing to the table, they complement one another, but they don't always align with one another. So I can understand why the both of you having these two different ideas on finances inside of your marriage. I can understand why the both of you are feeling a sense of sadness. You're probably feeling a sense of anger. And then also, as it relates to spending money and managing money, I'm sure that both of you are experiencing some feelings of guilt as well every single time you put a dollar out or even bring a dollar in. So there are a couple of things that I kind of want to give you to consider as you and your spouse are working through stabilizing your finances and working through the grief that's associated with coming together with this vision for the two of you and your finances inside of your marriage. The first thing I want you to do is to name the grief that each of you are carrying. If you have not done so already, sit down and have the conversation from your side as well as from your spouse's side. What are some things that you are angry about? What are some things that you are fearful of? What are some things that you are having troubles accepting? What are some things that you might even be feeling guilty about with regards to your finances? The first step to handling grief is naming the feelings that are being brought up, naming the feelings that are being associated with this season of your life. Another thing that I want you to do is to switch your language. Switch your language inside of your marriage from me versus you to us versus the problem. Okay. One of the interesting things, especially when it comes down to finances inside of relationships, is that it becomes almost like these two competing sides to where I have my idea and I have my way of thinking, and you have your idea and you have your way of thinking, and I have my way of handling finances and you have your way of handling finances. And like I said, it almost becomes competitive. The second that you can change your language from me versus you to us versus the problem, and the problem that you stated inside of your letter has become that you all grew up with very different experiences with money. And now it's carried over inside of your marriage. The advice that I would give would be to acknowledge the good as well as I don't like to call it bad, but the opportunities that we could learn from both of your experiences growing up in families and how your families managed money. Now, you say that every financial decision turns into an argument. That is rooted in one of the foundations of grief, and that is compassion. That's actually care. That's actually love expressing itself, but not knowing how to fully communicate inside of that moment. So, one of the things that I want you and your spouse to do is when you start feeling the tensions rise, when you start feeling the argument happening, to pause. Both of you pause inside of that moment. And instead of answering the question, what are we upset about? Ask yourselves, what are you fearful of? I can almost guarantee you that the second that you answer that question, you'll begin to see that the both of you are fearing something that ultimately is affecting the love, that is affecting the connectivity, that is affecting the relationship at large. And when you can find that common ground, you'll be able to approach financial conversations a little bit better and with a much more clearer head. The last thing that I really want you and your spouse to do is to find some type of shared win. With regards to a shared win, find a way that the both of you can have influence and feel good about the decision, whether it's saving, whether it's spending, or even combining both of those elements inside of the decision. I believe that it will really help you weigh what works for your marriage and what doesn't. This is the little bit of relationship advice that I'm going to give. Your marriage is not supposed to be the same as what you saw between your parents and what your spouse saw between their parents. It's got to become what can work and should work for you and your spouse. So, I guess another word of advice that I see a lot of people who are grieving, especially with finances, is you've got to stop comparing your situation to somebody else's situation and experience. And we see this with all levels of grief. We see it with health. We see it with finances. We see it with career and opportunities. Most of the time, we are grieving because we're also comparing our experience to somebody else's. So I would encourage you again, name the grief that each one of you are carrying. Switch your conversation from you versus me to us versus the problem, and then create some type of shared win for the both of you to glean from one another, learn from one another, but then move forward with one another so that you aren't experiencing all of these arguments and all of this burden that's associated with your finances and your marriage. So, to answer your question, how can couples grieve and grow through financial struggles without letting money become the third person in the marriage? The truth of the matter is just don't let it happen. Do not allow that third wheel, do not allow those arguments to rise up so much. Now, when I say rise up so much, what I mean is the quantifier of the argument. So go back to what I said. When you start to see those arguments rise up and it almost feels like it's a third person in the room, it almost feels like it's an elephant inside of the room, rewind. Pause for a minute and say, you know something? Third person, you are not allowed inside of this marriage. You are not allowed inside of this conversation. My spouse and I, we're going to talk about what we are fearing inside of this moment. We are probably fearing the same thing. We're going to find common ground together, and it is going to be us versus the problem. We're not going to give the problem place inside of our marriage. So I hope that this helps out a little bit, and also anyone else who is watching who is experiencing some financial grief inside of your marriage. I pray that this advice gives a little bit of hope and a little bit of encouragement to you and your marriage. Thank you again for joining me at my desk. I'm Dr. Dandridge. This has been Designing Your Goodbyes. I would love to see you inside of this next conversation. Hopefully it'll be something that can encourage this season of your life. Do me a favor, share this with somebody. Share this with somebody who might be experiencing a little bit of turmoil inside of their marriage as well and needs a little bit of advice on how to get over this speed bump so that they can move inside of the next season. Okay. So listen, I'm going to see you inside of the next video. I promise you, as soon as you click on the button, I'll be right there to welcome you, and I'll talk to you soon.